Good day everyone and welcome to another vlog for the Exodus 7 to 12K JV project. This week I managed to get 2 shots done. Isn't God awesome? God is awesome. Okay, so I just want to show you guys the 2 shots and mention something else, and that'll be it for the week. So let's get into it. So the first shot is this one where Moses and Aaron hand off the rods. The reason he hands it off, you can see on screen, the scripture says that God specifically told Moses to take the rod that was turned into a serpent and to strike the river with that one. And then God says to Moses, tell Aaron to take your rod, aka the one he has in his hand, take the one that's yours and stretch it out over the country to turn all the water into blood. So basically what that means is they didn't, share a rod. You couldn't just, let's hold the rod together. That didn't play out that way. So even though it's not physically written down in scripture, Moses had to give it back in order for Aaron to do it. It's just plain logic. So I did a very quick shot, just handing it over. Now, it looks a lot faster than it actually is to make it, unfortunately. I did a tutorial a while ago about having characters pick up things specifically, and I used that exact technique in this case, except that the objects that were getting connected were moving. So it made it extremely difficult. But I want to show you guys that, and I'm going to link to a specific tutorial about that in the post. There are actually 2 tutorials online that I know that are really good with this particular issue. So I'll definitely link to those, but I want to show you guys this one first. Okay, so here we are. I'm just going to switch it to solid view so it renders nice and fast, and I'm just going to focus on them. Okay, now here you can see we have the origin of the one rod, and we have an empty that's paired to that. Now, the reason we're using an empty is because we have to tie at some point the rod to the empty because the rod is already tied to his hand. So there has to be a secondary tying that takes place. So what happens is I use a constraint. The constraints override parenting, which is absolutely awesome. It's totally to our benefit. So as you can see, I use world space. And what's extremely important here is that you make sure that your empty's size, rotation, and location is exactly the same as the rod at the point at which the transition starts. And not at which it starts, at the point which it is totally released. Sorry, I had that mixed up there for a second. The reason you have to do that is because we have to give it gradually. When things just suddenly snap to something, it's not natural. There is a quick movement, usually when there's a handover, but it's not instantaneous. There's at least like 4 or 5 frames that, just kind of, how do I put this? There is a Bezier curve to it, for lack of a better term. So I want you guys to pay attention to the way that the empty works here. So it's very short. You can see it's only like 5 or so frames. Let me see how much it is exactly. Yeah, it is roughly 5 frames. So what happens is it's still in Moses' hand at this point completely. The empty just helps to tie it to Aaron's hand, because this empty at the point of handing over is completely tied to Aaron's hand. Yeah, I see this little issue about the pinky, but it's stuff that happens, unfortunately. I'm not going to re-render it just because of the pinky. So anyway, you can see that this is where the handover happens. You can see that the constraints increase, and suddenly it's tied to Aaron's hand. That's all it is. You can see that the empty is tied to Aaron's hand. So I'm going to release it again, and I'm going to take it back. See? There you go. See, the empty is tied to his hand. It's just tied to this little loop thing from Make Human. So that when his hand comes and there's agreement and the rod changes hands, it suddenly becomes Aaron's. And there it goes. It's an extremely simple method, but it is so, so helpful. So just to show you guys what I mean by rotation and scale and all that kind of stuff, let me just get to that exact point again, where it's handed over. That's odd, it didn't keep the rotation. I think I applied the visual transform. Anyway, the point is that I did struggle with some rotational issues with this rod specifically that didn't translate to Moses's. So this one isn't the best example, but like I said, you have to make sure that everything matches. If it doesn't match and you rotate it, this is what happens. It'll snap to whatever the properties are of the empty. And for some reason, in this case, it works that it doesn't match. Let me show you guys on this one. I think this will be a better example. Let me just get the handover point here so that Moses's hand comes up. Okay, there's the Moses empty. Let's just get the constraint going here for the rod. Okay, the handover happens somewhere around here. Okay, and then there's a quick stop and 1. There. Okay, so let's see if these two match. Yeah, see? Now you can see it matches. It's supposed to match. Only the dimensions differ because an empty doesn't have dimensions. It's empty. It's just a point. So this is what has to be. For some reason, that's not working with the other rod, but for this one, it works. So if you sometimes do have to kind of mess with the rotation of the object that you're parenting it to, go for it. As you can see, it created a flawless response there. Aside from the pinky, but the pinky is nothing to do with the stick. That was just me. So, you get the point. So anyway, getting on to the next shot. So the next shot is where Aaron actually has his hand stretched out and the rod stretched out over the country, and it's very difficult to show on a single screen that the entire country's water is being turned into blood. So I kind of felt led to go for a hieroglyphic kind of masked look. I may still modify it because I do feel that it's a little bit out of focus is the wrong word. It's too small. You struggle to see the rivers and all that kind of stuff. So what happens is there's a massive zoom out for a scale suggestion. I'm just going to switch to normal full render so you guys can actually see that it's watery waves in hieroglyphic style. And then the country comes in. As you can see, there's the rivers, and you can see that there's this little shadowy embossed effect to show that it's kind of chiseled out or relieved. And then everything turns to the right color. You know, the water becomes blue. And then here, where the river was turned to blood already, you can see that it starts red. See, you can see it's red all the time. So this would be, I felt led to go for this one. I'm not sure that is exactly where it happened. I was just led to go for this one. So I made the origin point, because that's where he would lift his hands, to be from this location specifically because God chose to use Aaron in this way. So then from there, the red expands. And it expands and it expands to fill all the country's water. So you can see that it's, just press home. So you can see that it's there, the whole river, all the lakes, all the rivers, everything has been turned to blood, except the sea and everything else that the water is connected to. it's just the country's water. It has nothing to do with the other countries around them. This was specifically God dealing with the Egyptians. So everywhere that there would be fresh water coming into the country, all that would be turned into blood, because there's a section in one of the Psalms that says that God turned their floods, you can see it on screen, God turned their floods into blood so that they could not drink. So for the time that all the country's water was turned to blood, they could not drink. And I did a little research on this a few weeks ago, actually a few months ago now it would be. And it states that, at least for us in modern times, 7 days would be the max that you could go without water. Now, they were a lot healthier than we were because they worked a lot harder. They didn't, text all day and stuff like that. They worked physically harder than we do. So they were in much better shape. So 7 days for them would be hard, but it wouldn't easily take them out. You know what I mean? It would just be enough to say, uncle. That's pretty much all it's about. It's about surrender. That's all it is about. So anyway, just the country's water was turned into blood. I almost had it backwards there. All this country's blood was turned into water. So what I did for the 3D in this shot was I kept Aaron actually floating above the surface instead of making him shrink back. I had a lot of issues with him transitioning between the layers. That's how the 3D method works. It didn't quite produce a clean enough result. So what I did instead was I felt led to just keep his cutout, that defines him as a separate object, and just keep it as bright as possible as he fades out, so that he would fade out at the exact same distance from the background as he is over here. It also solidifies the fact that he's not actually falling from the sky, if that weren't obvious. But like I said, I do feel like I should modify this a little bit, zoom in more, because it's extremely difficult to see the red in the lines. You can see that it's barely a pixel wide. It's not enough. So I might just go back and just increase the scale a little bit. Or just remove the outlines. It's one of the two. But I would rather not remove the outlines. I can just lighten them up a little bit or something. I don't know, but I don't want to remove them completely. I really don't. Because I like this. This is really nice. So anyway, I want to play you guys these shots smoothly so you guys can actually see them the way they're supposed to be. So anyway, before I do that, I just want to add that in this point over here, I want to add those red action background type stuff as a transition to show how the individual pieces also turn into blood, like ponds and the vessels that were standing separate and all that kind of stuff. It applies to that as well. So I just want to add a few shots like that. It's very quick. It's going to be very snappy. So it's going to have, let me just find an action background. Stuff like this. Stuff like this purple from the Magicians. Okay, so now I get to play you guys this shot. Here you go.
Stone. Stone.
As you can see, it's a very quick shot, but I really want to have it be a little bit more impactful, because you're like, what's going on? Anyway, you guys get the point. I just want to show you guys how to get this relief effect in the compositor. It's super easy. You guys are going to love it. Okay, so I'm in a clean project. I'm just going to go into the compositor and just going to add something. Let's use a video. Let's go movie. With movie clip. Hold on, I just want to scale this sucker so we can actually work at a decent pace here. Okay, so let's just scroll into where we actually see something. Just want to stretch this out, press home. That's way too far, why is it so? Oh. Let's just pick something interesting. Yeah, let's take that. Okay, we want a backdrop. Okay, now all you need to do is you need to go filter, take a filter, and select shadow. Boo. Instant relief. Isn't that cool? That is just so cool. I love that. And if you want to take it further, you can, let's just add a noise texture. Let's take clouds. That'll do. Input texture. Let's get some clouds here. Texture. And go mix. Go multiply. Go there. Take that. Stick that in there. Obviously, we need to just harden it up a little bit. Hold on. Just need color ramp. There we go. Make it ease. Just make it smaller as well. Let's make it 8. Something like that. Just extend it. No, not extend it. Let's be a little smaller. Something like that. Okay, and if you want to, you can add a little bit more to it. By just scaling it up. Where's that distort feature? Scale. Let's translate it a little bit first. It'll actually help if I scale it up, you know. Well, the thing is being difficult. Okay. Let's make it 4. Just to add some bigger dents. Let's make it B-spleen and see what that does. Okay, and then we can just reduce it. Let's go for 0.3. And there you have a relief on the wall. Isn't that awesome? So you guys can easily do something like that as well for your projects. I haven't tried rotating the light source yet for this effect, but I don't think it's really necessary. I mean, this really does it. It does the trick. But anyway, that's it for this week. I hope you guys have a great one, and God bless you.